Everybody, we will open the council meeting, the final council meeting of the year, the 12th of December. We'll open with our karakia. Remember, we're online and Councillor Johnson is joining us online. So let's start with our karakia.
Okay. Kia ora koutou. Toru whā. Whakatakata hau ki te uru. Whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, tihei, Mayoral. Go Notre Dame.
Thank you. We're going to note taku parae for lateness. We've had no requests for public forum. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest this morning? No? No notification of extraordinary business? So confirmation of minutes from the council meeting on the 21st of November. I will move that. Seconded by Councillor Leggett. Any changes or... Yes, Councillor Philo.
There was a change with regard to the... I'll just bring it up. With regard to 11.1, the notice of motion. The notice of motion was received by the Chief Executive from myself.
Oh, rather than Councillor Wehappy. Yes, we'll make that change. So with that change, all those in favour? Those against? Carried. Mayor's report. I'd like to thank everybody for all their work this year. It's been a big year, and I'm sure next year will be. And I hope everybody has a great break over Christmas. The invitations have been flying out the door this year. As you all know, we've all been busy. And I want to thank Kylie, who's covered a lot for me, as has Mike, who's covered a number in the last couple of months for me, so thank you for that. We had this Porirua was very successful in the Wellington Airport Awards with Te Kuanui, the Polyfest winning the category, so that was a very exciting night. I went to the Freeman Roofing function, and that was, I have to say, a great thing, having a wander around their factory. It's a giant factory if you get to see it up there in Elsdon, and there's another one coming next door. Kylie and I went to the Whitby Collegiate Market Day. There's been lots of markets and galas on. Plymouth and Residents Association, I joined their big clean. I have to say it's interesting what people throw away. I found a swing set in the bushes. The Queen's game in town, unfortunately it doesn't look like they'll be back for a final this year at the arena, but we wish them well this weekend. We had the Solomon Flag Islands first time flag raising. That was great. Bishop Viard prize giving, Izzy and I went to that. We popped into the Mary Potter Strawberry Festival. I think just about everyone called in there at the arena. Carly and I went to the gala at Hirota Marae. We had the over 70s lunch where Kylie and I helped 180 locals were served. They had 50 on the wait list. Every year it's getting bigger and bigger. And that was run by a couple of guys this year, not the Lions, so it was really successful. I had the prize giving and awards for the USC number 41 squadron, and they're the cadets that help out at citizenship every 6 weeks. We had Louise Upston out for the Pacific Disabilities Day at Pātaka. And once again, that was a really successful event, and nice to have her support for our Pacific people. Went to the Teenage Mums prize giving, Whitby College prize giving. And when I went to that prize giving, Kylie and Jeff went to the City of Cadets prize giving and their parade, which was apparently a good night because Jackie is leaving and someone else will have to take over. And Nathan, Kylie, Ross and I went to the Rotary fundraising dinner for the Huramurawai Trust with the Barmy Army and Jeremy Coney. I think he's the best spoker I've actually heard. He was a very entertaining gentleman. We went to the Partners Porirua Tupai Rangatahi Awards. Very tired this morning, sorry. Joined Pacific Collective for their celebration and great to see that they've got some houses on the ground, some frames up, so that's really good. Salvation Army store opening We attended that at the weekend. I presented awards at the Writing for the Disabled Christmas party last Saturday. Then I judged the fashion in the field at the Porirua Bay Hub. They ran a huge festival for Christmas at Porirua Bay, and they had a great turnout in their community. So congratulations to the volunteers that run that. Sunday, I had the Malaga concert, which was awesome, and then the Virtuoso Strings concert right next door. So both extremely successful and great turnouts. Porirua College prize giving, that was a great turnout of councillors. Kylie, Jeff, Mike and Kathleen and I went. That was our last prize giving for the year. And then yesterday, Wendy and I went to the opening of the Kaimawana Hub Seafoods with Minister Shane Jones. So that's awesome to have a $17 million investment into the city. So we're very lucky to have that on our doorstep. So apart from chocolate, we're now known for seafood. I will ask Taku if he's got anything when he comes in. We've got no petitions or committee recommendations, so we're going to go straight to our first report, 11.1, the Council's submission on the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Bill, I'm going to move it, seconded by Councillor Ford. Any discussion on this? Straightforward. Okay, all those in favour? All those against? Carried. 11.2, review of feedback on the future of Tireti Hall. So I'll move it to put on the table. Thank you, Councillor Hayward, seconded. Open for discussion. Any discussion on this one? Yes, Councillor Philo.
Hi, good morning. Hello. Sorry. So I'd asked for if we could have comparable lease for other non-profit organisations. Have we got that information through the chair, please?
No. It's quite complicated to provide because it's done on a square metre basis generally and depending on the amount of exclusive use. So I have not sourced that because I'm struggling with quite how to answer it, to be honest. So the short answer is no, we do not have it today.
But we are working on some advice around all of our leases on reserve land, which is mostly, I think there's about 60 of them, which is mostly non-profits that we're coming to you in the new year, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. I just bring it up because the Amateur Radio Club had expressed that it was a jump, and I know it's not necessarily big amounts of money, but when you work out the percentage, it's like a 66% increase. So, and they do a lot of really great work in the community. So I just wanted to recognise that as well. And also, I just wanted to ask the Mayor if the consultation that was done through this process was what you had in mind in April when you requested it.
We did the consultation that I thought we requested.
Okay, cool.
Were you not happy with it?
No, I'm
Oh,
just...
Oh, okay, yes.
Because you'd expressed that at that meeting back in April. I just wanted to check with
Sure. That all?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty straightforward to me, this report. I just wanted to raise the point, it was interesting to note 16 submissions. 14 were from the Amateur Radio Club, but most of them live outside of our city. So, and I just wonder, what do they actually do for the city?
Noted. Anybody else? Councillor Hayward.
Atamari, kura mātou mihi kaikana hita katoa. Thank you very much to the officers for preparing the report. There's been a great deal of change with regards to the use of this site, notwithstanding that there is a broader issue of how to be equitable with the charges that are laid onto non-profits with regards to the use of facilities across the entirety of the city. I suspect that this is probably about the best as we've got in terms of an equitable solution to enable, in this instance, a amateur radio club to allow it to continue operating in Titahi Bay. Amongst my many hobbies, I restore and upcycle valve radios. Hold on, I'm not going to put you all to sleep. Indeed. But the point being is that there are communities of individuals who don't necessarily turn up to club meetings who participate in a passion around amateur radio. And I also would suspect that even if this was an issue around our preparedness, especially in Titahi Bay, where we are later on going to talk about a section of road that puts us in a very dangerous position should it fail for whatever reason, we are going to need to rely on multiple means of being able to communicate with people outside of the bay, outside of Porirua. The Amateur Radio Club are suited to be able to do that to provide that kind of capacity in addition to the work that Remo already does with community partners. You ask Councillor Duncan, what is the purpose, the value of an organisation where most of its members come from outside of Titahi Bay? I argue to you they are going to help us out when there's a problem, because community action is where we will all be stronger together. Kia ora.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't think so. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. 11.3. Wellington Regional Sports Ground Facility Fees and Charges, moving to put on the table, seconded by Councillor Waddle. Open for discussion. Who wants to go first? Because I've got views on this. Councillor Hayward.
First question to officers. I want to go to point 30. Which is around the role of trying to get improved transparency, I guess, from, and in there it asks that this is actually going to be an action for sporting organisations. Can we just be very clear about how that is articulated from the viewpoint of officers in regards to this report? What does that mean?
Thank you for the question. Through the Mayor, what that means is the recommendation there is the transparency with sporting members is not understand what their membership fee goes towards. So it's an opportunity for the sporting organisation to raise that awareness of a percentage or a figure goes towards that fee, a percentage goes towards, or a figure goes towards the membership or affiliation to the sport or club. It's about raising the transparency from the sporting organisation, as well as us doing our job around transparency of cost.
Right.
So two different things there. Sorry.
Indeed. I'm not trying to conflate these two, because you've helpfully put it in point 31 with regards to our role of costs, which leads me to my next question, if I can continue.
Yes.
Thank you, Wisha. The issue I have with this is, did officers, notwithstanding the amount of material that's been written in the report around watching other councils, obviously Hutt City are going through that process as we speak, whether officers had considered of some sort of at least reporting regime where it acknowledges the nuances across councils, but could at least provide that information in a reasonable fashion for all organisations and the general public to get some sense of how this is, how costs are being passed on across the region, and more specifically in Porirua.
Through the Mayor, I hope I understand the question. As set out in our revenue and financing policy, each council will identify the rates and user fees. That's consistently applied across all councils, but I'm not sure that's my answer. I'm not quite sure if that's answering your question.
It probably isn't, but that said, the report goes into great detail talking about the various pressures on trying to deal with the costs recovery for the use of those facilities in general, as well as it sitting as a business unit that sits part of the council as a whole, and trying to deal with the accounting of that as well. But this is going to be an issue for all the councils in the region as well, and I'm trying to understand to what rigour did council officers across the various councils work together to say, hey guys, we should probably set up some sort of reporting regime so that we can work collaboratively, so we can at least show our working. Because I read this and it feels like, you know, a buck pass, really. So was any conversation like that held?
Through the Mayor, no, it wasn't. This was a snapshot in time around what's our current practice, and then the recommendation stated out that we need to continue to work closer together, which that should be an outcome.
Okay, I'm going to withhold at this point and come back for comments later on because I know there'll be other people who've got questions because I've got some commentary on this.
Yeah, you can say it now if you want to, the commentary.
Okay, well, thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the good faith undertaken by officers to try and report on an item which has been basically at council table, or certainly by councillors, for 2 years. It started in the hustings of the last local election campaign. So it's 2 years. We've got a very professionally made report by an external provider being charged by, the cost of which has been shared by several councils. And I am no clearer to understanding or providing guidance to our communities about the transparency across the region for sporting organisations. And I feel like we have, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the sporting analogy, we dropped the ball here. Collectively, not necessarily Porirua City Council, and I don't want to make this sound like it's a go at our own officers here by any stretch, but we could have chosen to take a far more proactive approach with regards to setting up some level of a reporting table, reporting mechanism to help community organisations and the general public, not just those who are users of those services, but those who benefit from the use of those services as well. I urge council officers to reconsider perhaps their thinking around this with regards to points 30 and 31 about how they can do that. I'd like to see if officers can come back next year to talk about whether or not they've got any additional thinking about that. I'd like to have this resolved so we don't have to go into another local government election campaign where a group who were assiduous in their campaigning for better transparency and reducing in terms of seeing that their fees were being reduced or at least being seen to be fair and equitable, actually don't have to go over the same arguments again. Finally, I just reflect on one of my neighbours, Edu. Edu's a teenager. He loves football. He plays at school level. I think eventually he's probably going to go play at club level. I wouldn't say this guy's the second coming of Winton Roofer. I don't bloody know. I'm not that good a scout for football players. But I know that their parents love Edu enough and provide the support as any caring parent would. All I'm asking for is a sense of responsibility from those who provide the facilities for people like Edu and people whose families are not as fortunate as Edu's to be able to participate in recreation without the uncertainty of whether or not the cost of doing so is equitable for all. Kia ora.
I'm going to get Wendy to answer your question, but for me, this report or this document isn't worth the paper it's written on. It should have gone to the bin. It should never have happened because these are all set at each council level. We cannot come together regionally on anything, let alone try and reduce the fees in our area and then get some other city to take them up or vice versa. It was never going anywhere. It was a waste of time, this report. I will get the CE to answer it for you.
I'm not sure I'm actually going to answer it because I'm not entirely clear what your question and what you would like us to do. So all of our fees and the way they are set are embedded in our revenue and financing policy, which is part of our LTP. Each council constructs that differently, different methodologies. We all have corporate overheads that are overlaid in a different way in just about every council. So I was interested in the council participating in this review because I thought it would try and lay some sense over the top of it. But like the Mayor, I am frustrated with its outcome because it simply hasn't gone any way to answer the question that we thought was going to be answered. And in fact, it was really only Porirua, Wellington and just the two of us who participated in the end because the other councils, perhaps wisely, saw the likelihood of this progress being made on this issue regionally was likely to be not that great. So we're happy to look at our own fees and you can make those adjustments if, as part of any annual plan process. Perhaps not this one, can I say, because we haven't done the work yet, but that is your prerogative to do that. But it just does mean that if you reduce them, the ratepayer gets to pick it up, and if you increase them, it's a relief on the ratepayer. So and I thought that this review would do more in terms of cross-code equity, more in terms of being able to work out whether there was some clubs, some codes certainly take more in national fees than others, and so there's all sorts of complexities in these fees. So I'm with you. This is not an answer, and I'm disappointed in its outcome. And I suppose I'm a bit reluctant, therefore, to commit the council to doing any more regional work on this. Happy to stay in touch with the other councils, but if you think there is an issue with our fees and that they're too much or too little, we're happy to do that work. But I don't really want to spend officers' time trying to corral other councils when our first step into this has been quite frustrating.
Councillor Ford.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Wendy, and other speakers who have spoken. I was just curious. I love that Porirua City Council was trying to work alongside other councils and to try and be a bit more transparent around our fees. I thought that was fantastic. But yeah, again, the outcomes weren't quite what we were expecting in terms of the report. I just wondered around point 28, where we're talking about the next fee review and whether we are still committing to continuing on this, but it sounds like we are not going to. And does a decision need to be made in terms of moving forward, or do we contribute to this bottomless pit that Martin Jenkins seems to think we have of money?
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Ford. This is an internal piece of work. It's not a regional piece. So this, to the CEO's point, that we will be undertaking this work ourselves. We've commenced the discussions with finance around resourcing, and that's why there is a period of time that we're trying to work through that. And that's to provide more information to make some decisions at this table.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for this. A couple of things that I noted was that in the findings for item 23, cross-subsidisation with sports is already well in place with councils. And I take Wendy's point there that affordable sport's a noble ambition, but if it makes rates unaffordable, then it's just shifting the cost around, isn't it? And that's the problem as far as I'm concerned. I also was really interested to see it's 10 years since we've actually reviewed charges for these grounds. That's probably something that we could be looking at.
Councillor, are we happy?
Thank you. I think Councillor Ford asked my questions, but agree that the outcome and, to think that actually we could have taken that 14 grand and, helped reduce some fees for some clubs, but never mind. As Councillor Duncan said, there's a tough balance between what we charge and what we don't charge, but I have to say that the current fees are very fair for what we provide as a city. Watching my son play rugby every Saturday and having to go to other areas in the regions, I have to say that our sports fields in particular are pretty top-notch. So for what they pay for at the moment, I actually think that it's, not that bad. Again, too, with the fee review, and I'm going back to what Councillor Hayward's saying about equity, is that unfortunately there are some clubs that are better at sourcing funding than others. So it would be quite good if the council could work alongside some of the clubs who are struggling to see if there's a way that we can work with other community groups, organisations to see, if there's any chance we could do something there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Yes, I think I agree with others that this is a waste of money non-report. However, can I just ask you, Councillor Hayward, can you give us an example of you talk about transparency a lot, and I don't disagree with you. What would better transparency look like in terms of, we've had this discussion around here. We already heavily subsidise these areas, and I don't disagree with you, Kylie, that we shouldn't be talking to clubs where we can help. But don't forget, it's not our job. Our job is to price our sports fields going out. It's not to try and look for other cross subsidies that we can apply to them either. But so could you just help us all with that?
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Councillor Leggett. Happy to answer. I think that whatever is done in terms of transparency should be done from a principles-led approach, and we should not be using complexity as a mechanism to not provide better clarity in terms of how we report this. And I'm not just talking about Porirua City Council. I'm talking about all the other councils in the region to which they support our sporting codes. So one of those things would be, yes, it is easily accessible through each council's documentation, their financing policy, and the share between fees and general rates for those services. It's also an opportunity for individual councils to also illustrate where they are providing additional features, levels of service for recreational spaces for specific codes that would allow there to be a sense of equity in terms of the issue that Councillor Wehapi and others have raised around equity across sporting codes. The other principle I would also want to see in there as well is just trying to explain the working better around the issue of overheads, the issue of accounting practices. Noting that if we use, by analogy, Three Waters as a classic example of each of our councils somehow doing all of their accounting very differently, we have to find a way forward in terms of being able to provide further clarity and for those who are not chartered accountants. And I think that there is a way to do that as a communication document that allows transparency to come from each of the councils. Now, I should just point, as soon as I've been given an opportunity to speak again, that my comments that the CE responded to were not some sort of position around calling for reducing fees right now. That is a conversation that we'll have in the fullness of time, as to use the Chief Executive's words, our prerogative as elected representatives. That said, I do think that there's the broader points which were raised in points 30 and 31 of the document on notice around transparency by us, but also perhaps approach across the regions. I understand the CE's point about that, but I'm going to continue to advocate for it, and hopefully in the fullness of time we will get a better document that actually helps organisations understand our equity challenges. Kia ora.
Thank you. Does that complete you, Councillor Leggett? Okay. Councillor Trillin?
Thank you very much. Yeah, echo a lot of the comments from my colleagues so far. I was very surprised to see a report that we'd invested to this degree and have a headline recommendation of continue to work together. When as soon as I read that, I thought, okay, well, that sets the tone for the entire report. The conclusion at 33, the findings and recommendations within the review reiterated our existing understanding of Porirua City's sports grounds and facilities charges, which means we didn't learn anything.
No.
Given all of that and the comments around the table, question for Wendy, we're not acting on any recommendations here today other than receiving the report. What would the implications be if we voted not to receive the report? If we were to agree with the comments that you had made before around not wanting to do further work in this particular space, would it be appropriate for us to vote the report down?
Jack can correct me, which he often does, but receiving the report is receiving the report. It is irrespective of content. You are receiving it. If you wanted to make a comment on the content, you should move an amendment in that regard. Am I right, Jack? Yes.
Yeah. So I guess my area of concern is, given the fact there are particular things in here, it says, keep going down this road and do this particular action, and the comment that you made before, Wendy, around being reluctant to potentially do more in that space, does receiving the report imply an endorsement that work continues to happen? Because I don't want us to vote to receive something and then more work be done that no one actually wants to see done.
No, it doesn't imply anything at all. It is simply laying the report on the table and noting that you have discussed it. Seemed to cut out there. It is neutral of any meaning in that sense. So if you wanted to express your dissatisfaction, you would have to move an amendment in that regard, that you were disappointed in the results or words to that effect. But not receiving the report says you never discussed it, which is not true.
Okay, cool. No, that's a helpful clarification. Given that and that there aren't further implications, I don't feel the need to, in that case, move an amendment or vote it down. I think it's pretty clear what everyone's view is. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, Councillor Waddle.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Glenn, for your work in this. As we, whether we like or dislike the report, we have to receive the report, I think. Maybe we can change the wording to begrudgingly receive the report. But just a quick comment from me. As you probably all know, I'm involved quite heavily with hockey, and hockey plays across 9 different turfs across 6 different councils in the region, and that's where the problem lies. You're dealing with 6 different councils that are charging 6 different lots of fees, and it's disappointing to see that through this process, while Porirua and Wellington City were involved, the councils up the hut did not want to partake or choose to help out. And I think it's about working together going forward. Obviously, there's not much more we can do with what the recommendations come from the report. I think we need to continue to work better with our organisations and our transparency, to Jeff's points. But also, I think if fellow councillors were keen to workshop options or ideas around how we help sports fees, that's certainly something we could look at in the future. Obviously, there are 1,000,001 other things that our city has to worry about as well. But good access to sport and recreation is important too, and I just want to finish off with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waddle. Yes. There's not much more I can say because this was always going down a rabbit hole. The region was never working together on this project. I do think we've wasted our time on it, and I really don't want to waste any more time talking about it because it was never going anywhere. So all those in favour of just accepting the report, receiving the report, all those in favour, aye. All those against, carried. 11.4, transport budget, moved, put on the table, seconded by Councillor Duncan. I think officers are coming up. Do you want comment? Yes. Or are we going straight into questions? Mike,
is that okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I take the report as read. We did workshop this a few weeks ago. We're only talking about capital budgets here. This is just CapEx. This is a very dense report, so apologies for that. There was a lot in here in quite a short report. I just want to make the point that the report gives a sense of permanence and concrete around the budgets, no pun intended, but actually the way it works with transport and Waka Kotahi in particular is it's quite fluid. There are regularly changes and opportunities for us to change and to access subsidy. In fact, as recently, I think last week, Daryl, Waka Kotahi changed some of the settings around low risk, low cost. We haven't actually had a chance to absorb that yet to provide you with some advice, but there are always changes throughout the year with respect to Waka Kotahi funding, and we will come back to you with those as they come up. I just want to not leave you with the impression that this is somehow quite hard and fast and will never change, because sure as eggs, already it's changed since we wrote this report. And just the other point I wanted to make is there's a section in there on renewals. It's always tempting to look at renewals with respect to making savings. I just wanted to point out that that's exactly what we did with Three Waters over the last 30 years. And if you've been up Aurora Street, for example, lately, you'll see that it is sorely in need of renewals. So that's what it looks like if we don't renew our assets. And just finally, Mayor Baker, I just wanted to make the point that the renewals budget does include the culverts at Paatahunui that we are currently looking at. Daryl, did you want anything?
Thank you. Councillor Trillin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Baker. I'm going to vote against this paper. The analysis and recommendations that we've received here, I think, are understandable in the context. I want to note, I do think it is a good quality paper with good analysis, no slight at all on the officers that have developed it. My issue is I disagree with the underlying philosophy, that being we're in a situation here, we've got a central government that is ideologically opposed to investing in walking and cycling, and that's going to contribute further to entrenching car dependence across the country. And the decision that we are making here is to follow down the pathway of matching the infrastructure projects we're doing to what central government wants us to do. And I don't think that's the way that we should go about deciding our infrastructure projects in Porirua. So I think based on the workshops that we have, I completely understand why we've arrived here. But I think it's important for us to note that seeing an entrenchment of car dependency across the country, which is the natural consequence of the guidance from the government and the funding decisions of the government, is going to have major implications from a climate perspective, but also from a health and community building perspective as well. We know that in the absence of funding disparities, if you've got a level playing field, a project like Waitangi to Onipoto has an incredibly strong value proposition. It meets all of our strategic priorities, and it's something that we want to see happen within the city. So in my view, it would be hypocritical of me to critique the government decision to pull funding for these projects and then turn around and vote to do the same here. We're going through an extensive exercise at the moment around cost cutting and prioritisation, which is very appropriate. We should absolutely be doing that. And in my view, within the context of that, I think there's reasonable scope for us to have a discussion around continuing along with key projects like Waitangi to Onipoto. So I think from the extensive discussions that we've had, from the workshopping that we have, I understand that my view on this is a minority view. I don't want to kick up a major fuss. I'm not going to put up a doomed to fail amendment or anything like that. I just want to flag that I am going to vote against this paper, and that is why. But also to thank officers. I do think this is a good quality paper, and I do thank you for the analysis we've received on this as well.
Thank you, Councillor Tron. I will note point E, the renewals budget, 6.25, should have an M after it. It's not $6.25. 6 million. Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Wow. Yeah, good on you, Josh. Look, honestly, this paper I thought made total sense all the way through for me. And look, I walked down here this morning from Titahi Bay to the meeting. And one thing that the lovely big footpath we've got all the way from Titahi Bay to Porirua, it wasn't infected with other people. There was only me on the footpath for the whole length of it. Not one cyclist, not one other walker. So, yeah, good luck with the Waitangi to Onipoto there, Josh. The only question I have to raise is page 118 in the executive summary and the second to last par on page 119. In the recommendations, officers are recommending speed management plans continue without subsidy. What would those speed management plans consist of?
Through the chair. Two parts. What Mike alluded to last week, NZTA has actually come up with funding to implement speed management plans, which previously wasn't done, so under the low cost, low risk. But this is the speed setting rules where certain councils have to reverse blanket changes, and any changes we've proposed under our speed management plan to put them in. So we'll be applying for that funding, and it'll be subsidised.
But Councillor, this is the capital budget. This is for stuff like signage and works in the road that are associated with speed management.
Okay, so when you say reversing, are you reversing the ones where we went down to 50 k's from 70?
We theoretically, the Raiha, where we reduced Raiha from 70 to 50, theoretically could cover it. We'll be submitting that does not change, because that went through its own independent consultation phase. It wasn't a blanket speed change. My understanding is the requirement for reversal is against blanket speed changes that other councils implemented.
Thanks. Councillor Philo, did you have your hand up?
Actually, Councillor Duncan just asked part of my question. It was really clarification around the low cost, low risk programs. So just so I've got it right, we're applying for funding with regards to the blanket speed changes that we made. Sorry, can you just repeat that? I'm not quite clear.
So I'll step back. we received, like most road controlling authorities, we received no low-cost, low-risk funding. There were very few at all, including Wakatahi didn't get all their funding. So under that process, every council in their speed management plans, anything they had to implement was going to come out of that funds. So we were going to have to do our work irrespective of subsidy. We can now apply for that subsidy. So that any changes that we proposed through the speed management plan, which was lowering speeds around schools, marae, reducing the increasing the speed limit on Waitangi Link Road to 60, that all needs to be done. Still to be implemented.
Councillor Leggett?
Just carrying on from that. So what about the speed limit around the city centre?
Through the chair. Good question. I can't remember exactly where we got to on that.
We chose not to do it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Did we choose not to do it? 30k.
Yeah. So we would have to that'll have to be through a review.
So that would be through a review. So we'd still go ahead with like Papakowhai Road as well,
Yep.
which makes a lot of sense to me given the
We would have to request an exemption for that to stay down.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I must say that, yeah, as a general comment, I disagree with Josh, obviously, because I think philosophically we need to continue with the investment that we've made in the areas that we've already started, and it makes a lot of sense to me in terms of what you're suggesting. Can I just ask, and maybe this is a clarification, that 6.25 million unsubsidised, 2.5 it says in E. Yes?
Yeah.
2.535, who cares? It's not 100. Yeah, look, okay. For the purposes of this discussion, it does not matter. I just asked just remind us of that breakdown, or the breakdown of that 6.25? 3.525. We say 6.3.
It says 6.25.
So through the NLTP we got 20.36 million, and through the LTP we've got 26.71. So that's the difference. So there's surplus LTP money there, and we propose to retain access to that to address renewal items as they come up that need to be addressed.
Okay, so it's renewal. It's not specified, just as they come up. So can you give us an example of what we might spend that money on?
So there's the Porirua Beach Road slip. That's right.
I was going to ask about that because that's mentioned elsewhere.
Paikariki Hill Road has a mass concrete block wall that's half dropped into the stream and is undermining the road, so that'll be a renewal. There's the two culverts on Paikariki Hill Road within the village, Patanui Village, that'll all come under that as well.
That's great. Thank you for that. Can I ask, that reminds me about Paikariki Hill Road, is that going to be resealed and redone under the agreement that we had with Transmission Gully and whoever did that?
I asked that at the last meeting, remember?
Yeah. So what's...
That Board of Inquiry consent condition remains, still in discussion with Wakatahi. We'll be progressing that as well. We actually have works we want to do on that, but I want to have that discussion with Wakatahi first to make sure that we're not going to be investing money that we're not going to get recoup afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Hayward?
Kia ora no. I reiterate the thanks of myself with regards to the preparation of this report. I do think, like Councillor Trillin says, that it is being written in good faith, and that it is trying to thread the needle as best as a council who would be facing these same circumstances with a sudden cut from central government. I have a question that is relating to recommendation 2H, I think it is. Otherwise, we can cover this in point 62 around renewals. And point 65 rather, sorry, my apologies, which is around resilience. Point A says subject to detailed cost estimates and so forth. And then the pertinent language that I want to have some breakdown on is any urgent Titahi Bay road erosion control. Now, I know that in the workshop there was some utterances about that there was no immediate issue with regards to Titahi Bay road erosion. So if that is the case, then why would this language need to be in the report?
Through the chair. So obviously with the Wanera Anapoto project being proposed not to proceed, no, there's no emergency work to do there, but it could happen. We can't control how fast erosion happens, and I'm just identifying that that's where money may need to be spent to respond to something that could yet happen.
But perhaps we could have been more judicious with our language there, councillors. We're not suggesting that it will happen. We're saying that is the kind of thing that we could apply this funding for if it were to happen. But we weren't meaning to suggest that we're foreshadowing it actually happening.
It does, I accept the response. It does reflect to me, though, that its inclusion is somewhat notable. And for the community of Titahi Bay, the thousands of people who live there, it would, in my view, create an elevated level of concern that somehow is now being undercut by the don't bother your pretty little heads, people, you'll be fine. You see my dilemma here?
No.
That's probably because you don't live in Titahi Bay.
Well, the Porirua Bay people are the same for the beach.
No, because I want to come to that point as well. For some communities, they have multiple points of egress in and out. In a disaster situation, there are multiple methods by which they can get out. In Titahi Bay, there is one road, just one. And it happens to be it's situated in a location which is at elevated risk because it is along a coastline which has been, since even I have not been on council, been indicated that there are risks of erosion. I'm going to keep banging on this point and advocating for the people of Titahi Bay. I have foreshadowed this on a number of occasions, my concern about us with regards to Wanera Onipoto shared pathway and the resilience improvements that are necessary to complete that task. As I understand it from the response from officers, there isn't actually any additional funding because we don't know what kind of work is being done, but obviously there is an issue because that's why we've included it. That's the way I'm going to read it. That's the way I'm going to interpret it. I will want to take a vote separately on that part of the recommendation, and I'm foreshadowing that I'm going to vote no on that part. In spite of the good and sincere efforts by officers to try and deal with a situation which is not ideal, I am still not prepared to deal with the hypocrisy of a pathway that has been decades in the waiting, especially when it comes to resilience of a community that I call home, and many others do too. What I do want to close on, however, is the issue that was raised before. I'm going to say up to 6.35 million, and we can quibble about whether it's 0.25 or 6. There seems to be an incongruity in the paper. That's where I think the issue is. So this is regards to renewals 0.62A. And this comes to Councillor Trillin's position. I want to applaud officers for recommending that we maintain the levels of service on renewals. That's the same kind of stuff as filling the potholes. I am reminded of a certain individual earlier this year going to a crowd of people from all over the country and saying the phrase, do the basics and do the basics brilliantly. Now, we may not have ambition to increase our level of service. We're just trying to hold with the level of service we have now. And unfortunately, central government chose to reduce its funding in that particular area, so now we have to step up and lead. The person who said that, he's pretty important. He's actually in charge of central government, the Right Honourable Christopher Luxton. So to Mr Luxton, I say, when can we send the invoice for up to $6.35 million? Because we're going to do our job brilliantly. You happen to not be doing yours. Kia ora.
Councillor Weehappy.
Geez, do I have to follow that? Whew.
Yeah.
Right. I actually take, thank you, Councillor Trillin's point, although I don't agree with you. I do take your point in regards to central government in the past kind of dictating what we're doing on a local level. And I actually put that through when we were talking about our speed management at the time as well. So I totally get that. But unfortunately, as a council, we've always had to be kind of follow that because they were funding our projects. So I guess that's kind of that. I also think that it's a huge ask for our community to live and bike and walk all the time, especially in our community. You know, we have a lot of families in certain areas who are not going to take their 20 kids on a bike to school. They're also probably not going to walk them along some of our, inaccessible footpaths, particularly in the east. So we've got a long way to go before we become a walkable bike everywhere city. So I appreciate all the work that's actually been done here. These are our assets, and we have to look after them. And I'm okay with this. In regards to the Wenera to Unipoto, I'm with Councillor Hayward. I also had issues with the coastal erosion part of it as well, and I know it's always been a funding issue. If we're not going to do the pathway, we're not going to get this. So, that has always been in the back of my mind, the coastal erosion side. I'm not for the cycleway on the other side. So, if we had to choose one thing, it would be the coastal erosion going forward in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Waddle.
Yes, thank you. I respect Councillor Trillin's position on this. It's a tough one for the people of Te Tahi Bay and the wider city that would use that. And I think it would be something great to have if the funding was available. Unfortunately, it is not, and we've had to make some really tough calls. Just to save any terse debate on this side of the room, can we just get some clarity around that figure around renewals, whether it's 6.25 or 6.35 million? Some may call it a fiscal hole. The problem is the physical holes in the roads, but we'll get to that one day. Just on recommendation G about James Cook Discovery Drive intersection, that's currently a temporary roundabout. What is the life of a temporary roundabout?
To the chair, it's like how long is a piece of string? It gets to a stage where maintenance of the temporary items become an issue and replacing them, and they're not designed. They plonk onto the surface. They're not designed to do drainage as well as a permanent structure is. So sometimes we get a very short life, sometimes we get an exceptionally long life.
Okay, on that point, I just want to comment. I think when we put out to tender the permanent roundabout for that intersection, there was some disdain in the community of Whitby around why we've built a roundabout and then we're going to build a new roundabout. I think we sweat that asset as best we can, as we are, deferring it down the line, but we sweat that asset as long as we might get a nice, long-lived temporary roundabout. It's a perfectly functional roundabout as it is, which is good. My final question, just around the low-cost, low-risk portion of our transport budget, does that include our high-risk intersections?
Through the chair, any project with a total cost of up to $2 million can be funded under low cost, low risk. So some of our high risk intersections would be under there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ford.
Forgot what I was going to say, but I just want to make sure that it's clear. It's clear to me anyhow. Previous government didn't do everything great too, but we seem to diss this current government as if they're the ones who are like the evil. Anywho, so I just wanted to make that point. I understand your dilemma, Councillor Trillin, but I also agree with Councillor Leggett in terms of we do need to just continue with the work with the funding that we currently have. Agree with Councillor Hayward and Deputy Mayor around the coastal erosion. So I'm in favour of the paper.
Thank you. For me, it's a well-written report. We have workshopped this a lot. I agree with the resilience issue at Te Tahi Bay. That does concern me, and at Porirua Bay. And as for the James Cook one that Councillor Waddle spoke about, temporary, there's nothing wrong with it. Some of the sticks need to be putting back up. It works exceptionally well. I'd like to see more of those temporary roundabouts. They actually do work well. So thank you for the hard work on it. This has been an interesting paper. Does anyone else want to speak to it before I move to it? Taku?
Just picking up on Councillor Hayward's comments around resilience and erosion protection of, that's all contributing to the health and well-being to bringing back the life of the harbour. And anything that could patch up what's been done in the future in terms of its devastation helps.
Thank you. Okay, so you want to speak, Councillor Fellow?
Yeah, just following on from that, I'd just like a bit of clarity around the resilience point. So it's in the recommendation for H. So clearly around the room, a lot have spoken about the need for the resilience to happen at Titahi Bay. So I just want to check in and see if that message has been heard, or is it, what are we voting on?
We've all
in
heard
terms of
it.
that?
Yeah. Daryl?
Very much noted. I'm not proposing just to run out and do something because that's spending money that it needs to be used elsewhere, but want to monitor it and make sure that the consequences from a transport perspective don't cost us more.
Okay. Councillor Duncan?
Just one thing to add to that. If there were severe erosion there on that Titahi Bay Road, Wakakatahi would come in anyway, wouldn't they, if the road was threatened?
That's a different... If it happened under a event, an earthquake or a storm or something like that, yes, but they could also argue that we haven't done anything to give some form of protection to minimise it as well. So it's a balancing act all the time. Can't just be negligent. Still got to be shown to be maintaining our assets.
Thank you. Now, before I put this, Councillor Hayward, are you asking for 2A or 2H to be taken separate?
2A, please.
2A.
With regards to Wendy, that's only.
Okay, so I will put 2A first. All those in favour? All those against? 3, 4, 5. I will record the names. Councillor Ford, Councillor Hayward. It's Winera Shared Pathway 2A. So I said all those in favour, and we had against Councillor Ford, Councillor Hayward, Councillor Trillin, Councillor Nalo and Councillor Philo. So, no. Okay, so we're split, or is how's Councillor Johnson voted?
I think do a division.
Do you want to do it? We'll do a division. Okay, but has she voted? She's online though, isn't she? Yes, but Councillor Johnson, you need to indicate how you're going to vote on 2A. Okay, so the division, you want me to do it again? All those in favour? Oh, hang. To what, though? You're for. Okay, you're for. So we're doing a division. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Waddle, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Leggett, Councillor Wehappy, myself, and Councillor Johnson, yeah. So you've got them all. So we've got the fors and against now. Yep. So that is carried. So now we're going to put 2B through to H. All those in favour? All those against? Just Councillor Trillin. Yes, receive the report, yes. Yeah. So that was just Councillor Trillin against. Okay, before I move to our next report, Taku, did you have anything you wanted to say? Because when we went through the reporting. No, you're okay? Right, so we're going to move to 11.5, the annual plan. I am going to take these individually because councillors have asked for that to go individually. So I'm going to move it to put it on the table, seconded by Councillor Ford. Do you want me to open this up to the discussion first? Yep. Okay. Councillor Philo, would you like to go first? No questions? Oh, okay. Right, officers. Jim.
Okay, just very briefly, because I'll get Ian to talk to some of this, but I just wanted to, at the outset, say that there's lots of moving numbers at the moment, and hence what you find in this paper is several assumptions, both upside and potentially downsides, and we will refine this as we progress through the next several months before we get to consultation. The objective, of course, is to try and minimise the rates increase for next year, and we've put on the table some options for council to approve or not in regard to various community services that we provide. I think the other thing I just want to note is that as I say, the numbers are moving around. We've had more recent advice just this week from Wellington Water. There's upward pressure on what their recommendations are. We are working, Mike and team will be working with them, and we are working on the basis that we will keep to our LTP budgets. That's really all I need to say at this point, I think. Ian, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It has been quite a long exercise we've been undertaking here. We've been working on this for at least 2 or 3 months, reviewing our cost structures, looking for efficiencies, considering our revenue, fees and charges as much as possible. We've really kind of drilled down on the transport space, the previous paper, how it all fits together with the change in government priorities and so on. So we've really tried to cast the net as wide as possible to look at opportunities to pull that 10% down. That's in the long-term plan for year 2. We recognise the issues with affordability in the community. We have left almost no stone unturned in trying to consider options to alleviate that pressure. And we're also very mindful of some of those unknowns that Jim's mentioned. So. In other years, I think setting an annual plan might have been fairly straightforward because what's happening and you can see with 2020 vision the future and what it looks like. At the moment, with Three Waters transition, the ongoing pressures there are things that we don't have that 2020 vision on at the moment. We're also aware of things like the building consent change and so on. These are things that hopefully over the next 6 months we will have far more clarity than we do now. I mean, it's true to say that the clarity we have now is actually better than the clarity we had two months ago. So we are on an improvement trajectory as far as some of those contingencies that we've got built in there at the moment. But I think we have to have something there for those contingencies, and so that's why we've got 3 contingencies, 2 at $2 million each and 1 at $1 million. But as I mentioned, we have gone through as much as we possibly can. We've identified a $1.5 million internal savings opportunities within our operating spaces. We've relooked at the financial settings that we have in the LTP, and we recognise that some of those financial settings can be adjusted based on what we know now, things like inflation assumptions and so on. And we've relooked at the capital program. So we've relooked at all of these decisions that we made in the previous transport paper. They actually do flow through to the operational finances in terms of depreciation charges, interest charges, and so on and so on. So we've tried to look at every potential possibility for efficiency, but still maintaining levels of service where possible, and yet having that positive impact on what the ratepayers will see in their pockets at the end of the day. So that's an introduction. I guess it just kind of lays out the work that we've we haven't taken this lightly. We've put a lot of effort into this paper. I think it's a good starting ground, unless you want to indicate something else that you want us to focus on. But I present it to you for your consideration.
Thank you. I would note we had our recommendation 9. Note the additional operational budget has been proposed by Wellington Water Limited as outlined in paragraph 28. This is excluded from the draft annual plan. I just want to make sure everyone picked that up on their papers. So now I'm opening it up. Councillor Philo?
I've got a few questions of clarification.
Yes.
If I can just start with that. So I noticed in point 26, I go to that. It seems to suggest that the transition implementation costs are expected to be recoverable. However, in an email from the CE on the 29th of November, she indicated that these costs would not be recoverable. So could you please clarify whether there's been any change since that email, or is point 26 correct, or does the CE's earlier statement still stand? Please, through the chair.
Through you, Chair. Look, I think that indicates, the amount of uncertainty in this whole space. And just as an FYI, myself as the CFO of Porirua City Council, we do have a cross-regional meeting of the various CFOs from other councils on these types of issues. We haven't landed at a particular methodology and therefore treatment of how these costs will be incurred. So it's really difficult to answer, but for the purposes of this paper, we've assumed that we will need to fund the transitional costs, and whether we can claim those costs back from the future entity is still to be determined and still to be. But it's an example of how we still haven't yet landed on some of these really fundamental kind of financial questions around the new entity and what it's going to look like. So to answer the question, I can't answer the question with absolute conviction at this stage. Would that be a fair?
Wendy?
Yes. So when you're budgeting, you have to take a conservative approach to what the likely costs are. That's what we have done there. And I think I've explained before that we certainly can't transfer costs to a new entity. The bill has only just, the third bill for the new government has only just landed. So until we can, it has to be passed into legislation. That will be in about June, July next year. We have to subsequently set up an entity. So until there is an entity, you can't transfer anything into it. Yep. What you can transfer even at that point, Ian makes the point, that's we're ruled by all sorts of financial rules I have discovered in my life, and so accountants will tell us which proportion of that. But until we have an entity, we can't transfer any of those costs, and even that is uncertain because governments change their legislative timeframes. Our ability, it's somewhat simpler now. The shareholders of a new entity are likely to be the shareholders in Wellington Water minus South Wairarapa. But so there are lots of uncertainties, and we're regionally trying to go as fast as we can to get a new entity in place. It will require a decision from each council, so you can tell that even there's some uncertainty about how that will travel. So we've taken the conservative approach. By June next year, when the annual plan is ready for confirmation, we will have much greater certainty. So if we can, we will strip the costs out then, but we need to be cautious at this front end of the process.
Thank you. A couple more questions. So through you, Mayor, could the CE please clarify something for me? In the email last night, the CE stated that Wellington Water's request for additional staff wasn't included in the proposed budget, so this would be an increase. However, on page 5 of the report, or page 143, or page 134 of our documents, it says that 0.2 million is included in the draft annual plan for the requested extra staff, and then a 0.1 million for IT costs. So could I please get confirmation whether the request for staff is being included as part of the transition costs? It just seems to be a conflict with the email I received.
I'm going to get Ian to answer that. He is much more familiar with the ins and outs of the budget.
Yes, so this $2 million contingency it was my best understanding of, some of those costs that are most likely to be acceptable to council, and as opposed to those that aren't, or less able to be seen in a positive light by council. So this is essentially my call between what's in, what's out. I thought, based on the conversations that we had with Pat the other day as the new chief executive, that around the table there was some comfort with the proposals that were presented. So I put them in. But I do want to stress this is a contingency which is shifting, and what Jim mentioned, a paper that came in just in the last week or so from Wellington Water. These things are moving. I think Mike in the transport conversation used the word fluid. These numbers are fluid, and these numbers are changing, and these numbers will change right through to February, when we put together an actual consultation document in front of you for approval, and then probably right through to June we have the opportunity to continue to chisel these numbers and get them right. But at the moment, this is my understanding of a $2 million contingency and what it would look like.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, so the 0.2 is included. Okay. Another question, please. Just while we're on this topic and the topic of the consultation document coming up, will these Wellington Water-related costs be included in the consultation document for members of the public to comment on? Is that where the approach is?
The detail here, it's not currently proposed that they would be put out for consultation. So, the details in that particular table that you're referring to. So the table in paragraph 23, page 134 or page 5, depending on which year. So the numbers that make up that $2 million contingency are not currently considered to be something that we would consult on.
Through the chair.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jim.
I think it's worth clarifying that what we're trying to do here is, during the consultation, is we're consulting on an annual plan and a water services proposal for a water entity. So I think that's the point. I think the numbers themselves are somewhat less important than the bigger picture. This is minuscule in comparison to the outcome of a water entity being established. Does that make sense? So it's not material in a way to the public. What's material to the public is whether we enter into a water entity as a region.
Further question?
Yeah, I do have a further question. Thank you. So, are you speaking about the annual plan consultation, or are you talking about the entity consultation that we've got coming up as well alongside it?
We will have them in the same document because they are interrelated. They relate to different pieces of legislation, but for the general public, that's not a particularly relevant which act we are consulting under is not necessarily what the public care about. We will point them to the appropriate legislation, but we will do it in the same document because it does have a big impact on our future budgets, and it does not seem sensible to go out with two documents at exactly the same time. So it will be in the same document, but it relates to two different pieces of legislation.
Well, that makes sense. Is it my last question? Through the Mayor, could the CE please clarify something with regards to, she indicated that the reduction in the LTP Year 2 increase was achieved through savings in areas like consultants, back office functions and non-core activities, as well as our assets in an email last night. However, I couldn't find where the savings related to consultants outlined in the report or in the workshop specifically. The reduction appears to come from changes to the financial settings, to the CapEx adjustments. I'm wondering if it's in the operational part, but that seemed to just talk mainly about nursery and the property maintenance. There was I believe at 1.2. So was that where the consultants and those savings were?
Ian can answer the accounting question, but I would point out that over the last year we have been stripping out consultants from our budget. So we would start the year from a naturally lower position. So over the last 12 months, we've lost several consultants from the business, and there's probably more as the transport budget reduces. There'll be less consultants required in that. So they're kind of embedded in a few places probably, but I'll leave Ian to tell you his details.
Yeah, through you, Chair, yes, you're quite right. So that figure of what we're doing with consultants and looking for efficiency savings and back office reviews, that's all in that one line for the 1.2 optimise operational activities across council. So to answer your question, yes, that is where it is.
That's where it's at?
Yes.
Okay. Is that also included for the non-core activities that were mentioned as well? Savings with non-core council functions?
Most of those are itemised in here, like your funds, etc. So if it involves a service level reduction, that requires you to vote on it because it becomes an obvious thing for the public. We're always working on our back office costs to try and reduce those, but the things that you can see in recommendation 7, some of the issues that we raised with you at the council workshop, it depends how you describe non-core, of course. That's a lively debate amongst councils, what is non-core, but that's a pretty subjective view often. But things that have a public impact, we will bring to you, and you see some of them in this paper.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks very much for this report. I really commend you people for the work you've put into this. It's an amazing piece of work. And to think that we were facing 15%, not just 10% this year with the extra costs involved with insurances and everything. Man, you've done an amazing piece of work for us. And this is my 9th year in council, and every year we look for efficiencies in our council. And I think, God, how much further can we go with efficiencies in that? No, great work, and I really appreciate. I support this document. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Councillor Trillin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Baker. Yeah, but broadly support this in terms of the core recommendations. I'm really happy that we've been able to find savings across things like the financial settings and reviewing operations and all those sorts of things. I just want to touch, I guess, on the recommendation 7, I believe it was, which is the one that involves the particular items for consideration, and just to speak to those. There are some here that I think it might be worth going out to consult on to get the view of the public. There are others that I don't think it's worth the pain, and I don't think that we need to go down that route on something that I suspect we're likely to vote down in the final annual plan anyway, and we should bear that in mind. It's a mistake that we've made before. Parking fees is probably one of the ones for that. I think just in the current context, and I say as someone who strongly supported the change that we initially made there, I don't think now's the time to go and look at that again and to put it up. I think the pain is just too much. The building consents one, I'm open to consulting about that. I think the case made in the report about the potential risks of it, I think, is actually a strong one. And if we were doing an up-down vote, is it included in the final annual plan today? I think I would probably vote no, but I'm happy to vote yes for the purpose of going out to consult on that in particular. For pool charges, I just don't think this is a good idea, and I don't think that the assumption that we can raise pool fees at Cannons Creek by 25% with zero impact on patronage, which is the assumption in the report, I just don't think that holds water. And I don't think we should go to consult on that when we're... but not intended. So yeah, I don't think we should go to consult on that. And the strategic partnerships grant, the Young People's Fund, Major Events Fund, I think they're both important. I think they align with our strategic priorities. I don't think we can on one hand say that one of the pillars of our long-term plan as a strategic priority is putting children and young people at the heart of the city, and then on the other hand, saying that we're not going to provide those funds that we historically have. And again, I suspect that's something that if we went to consult on it, we would get a lot of response from the community, and I suspect we would probably decide not to go in that direction. Therefore, I just don't think that's worth the pain. So I'm going to vote against those ones. I'm happy to vote in principle for the building consents one for now to go to consultation, but yeah, noting that even that one I think I probably don't support. But the rest of this report, fantastic, great work, very happy with getting those savings. Thank you, officers.
I will take them individually, but Wendy Walker. Got a comment. I nearly called a Councillor Walker.
Definitely not a councillor. So, councillors, it's come to our attention that the 136,000 there between Tier 1 and Tier 2 Young People's Fund grant, we are in the midst of a process. I might get this slightly wrong, but I have colleagues in the seats over there who can assist me if I do. But we have had a young person's panel in train. They have provided some recommendations that we are about to bring to you on that fund, and they would be due to come to you in about February, and they would commit next year's fund. So if we were to if the council today were to take that as potential funding, we have a little bit of a good faith issue and with the panel that we established to do this work, and then we have sort of some practical issues about trying to get the money spent. If you put it out to consultation and in June you'd have to do some quite quick work, and so I wasn't quite aware of the process timelines and the consequences of those recommendations when this was suggested. So it is sitting in front of you, but I suppose our advice now is a bit less positive about how easy it would be to take that money as savings.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
I think most of my questions were asked by Councillor Filu. But now, can you just clarify, so that 136 is tier 1, tier 2, would, if that youth group panel came back and gave us their recommendations, that would be committed to for 1 year? Is
2 years.
2 years, okay, cool.
It's
Oh,
3
3 years.
Oh, okay, in which case it's pointless even discussing it.
Yeah,
if that's
well,
the
it's
case.
pointless having it in the paper.
Okay,
Let's be honest.
I mean, it's cool you found other savings though, but yeah. So it just wasn't clear to me around the water entity, and I guess I just wanted some clarity around when the likelihood of that was going to be created, because it feels like we're committing our ratepayers to this fund or this fee on the proviso that we might get it paid back or we might get it back. So is it going to be before June when we...
The entity won't be set up by June.
No, it won't be before June. The best that you could hope for would be in the first quarter of the new financial year that we would be able to make a decision. So we're going out to consult on whether it's a good idea. You will make a decision in June, round about when the legislations becomes available. And then you'll need to do, there'll need to be a subsequent report.
Yeah. Okay.
Legislation.
No, that's cool.
That was all.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Councillor, are we happy?
Thanks. My first question was regarding Wellington Water's request for the additional funding, so the 12 corporate staff. As I recall, in the workshop, the CE said that they are wanting to do away with all of the consultants because of the cost, and that's why they're wanting to hire the staff. Am I correct in
You
that?
are correct. Yep.
Great. So that clears that up. The second thing is after having the big conversation about the Young People's Fund Tier 1, Tier 2, I was one that actually was for taking this out for consultation. And I do understand Councillor Trillin's point, but also at the same time, we're already taking from our tamariki, from household budgets and their revenue through our already high rates. So, I don't know if we can take the standard that, yes, we do, well, they are certainly at the heart of our decisions, but when it comes to something like that, I feel like our households and our families are already struggling to pay rates. So I'm not able to kind of see that side of the argument, but I completely respect what you're saying. The other thing is that I'm getting really, really cross. Every year, or every 2 years, or every 3 years, we ask our officers to come back with cost-saving examples, putting it all out there. Yes, some of it's controversial, but we have never, ever been able to make any tough decisions, ever. And so we're looking at this Wellington Water thing like, oh my gosh, Wellington Water's a joke and they've done this and they've done that. But in the future, Wellington Water are completely important to our city, our harbour, our environment, our relationship with Ngāti Toa. Most of this stems on Wellington Water and what we're going to do as a city moving forward into the future as we grow. So can we please, I know that there are some things that are incredibly important like pool fees and all that kind of thing, but let's look at it from a different perspective and actually start making some pretty tough decisions so that we're able to afford what we need to instead of always having to go out to the ratepayers and increasing it year on after year. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
It seems ironic that I get to follow you this time around. He pātai. I want to go to point 44. Now, before I start, I wasn't able to participate in the entirety of the workshop on this item. So I want to thank the Mayor for giving me the time to hear me out with regards to some of my feedback that I would have asked in there. There are some questions, though, that I probably would have asked in the workshop that I'm going to have to ask now so as to get some clarity. So, 44, can someone just give me some real clarity when we talk about strategic policy, strategic priority CapEx with regards to Eastern Porirua reduction by 5.5 million? What is that in layman's terms to our ratepayers?
Graham.
Through the chair. That relates to the Eastern Porirua hub. There was 20 million in the LTP for the hub, and that was to start next year. And we also had in the LTP contingent funds for strategic property. So if opportunities came along or things came up, council could make decisions, and we already had that factored into the LTP, so effectively there was no rate impact. So it was contingency funding for projects. So that's the combination both of the start of the Eastern Hub, I think it was 2 million for that, and 3.5 million for the other contingency or strategic priority funds. That makes up the 5.5 million.
Okay, thank you. Next question is in regards to point 52, and that's with relation to the building consents charge-out rates. I'm trying to get clarity because it's not covered in the item on notice. What is the presumption of the volume of requests, applications that are going to be charged on this? Because I'm trying to understand that some of the data that I'm seeing around consents for new buildings in Porirua has basically fallen off a cliff. Are we using accurate projections in terms of what revenue is going to likely come as a consequence of increasing this charge? Or are we still labouring under the apprehension that we are walking on air when it comes to developers building in Porirua?
Who's answering that one?
Through you, Chair. So the calculation that we've very roughly put together, because this is an option for you to consider. We haven't, fully delved into the depths of it. We have based, the number that we've put up is based on current levels of activity and with the increase in the rates suggested here factored into that. So it's as simple as that.
Sub to that question? Yes. And so I'm to take it that officers are confident that the current projections are accurate in terms of the likely number of consents being applied for in Porirua during the relevant time period.
Yeah, through you, Chair, just to be clear, that's the current rate of revenues that we're seeing in the ledger at the moment, which therefore must be the current rate of activity that is generating those fees.
I'm just going to let Nick answer that.
Sure.
Through you, Chair, I can give you the numbers of consent. So we can give you accurate numbers on the last 2 years. What we can't forecast accurately is what's coming up next year. The general feel is that consents numbers will still stay relatively low in 2025 and start building in 2026, like up to numbers again. So I'll give you new dwelling numbers. So building consents for new dwellings, we've received 111 for the year to date, compared to 74 received in all of 2023. And we've normally had hundreds in the years prior to that. So consents are still down on 2022 when we received 197. So it's 197 in 2022, 74 in 2023 and 111 year to date for new dwellings. For all our consents, which means amendments to consents, etc., we've had 745 consents received year to date for 2024. This compared to 859 the same time last year in 2022. So the new consent numbers, there's only nearly 100 consents difference between that last year and this year. So that's the sort of numbers that we're dealing with at the moment.
So, thank you very much for that additional detail, Nick. It's most appreciated. I think this may have been answered already, but I'm just going to ask this question. Although there has been effectively a estimation of revenue based on the presumption of volume, are officers concerned that there may need to be a projection in a possible further reduction that has been fed by the increase in fees being proposed as well? And do officers propose to have some commentary provided around that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Look, if this was an item that Council did decide to take to consultation, then we would, in advance of that consultation, take into the calculation much more detailed factors like that which Nick has mentioned, but we would also have to consider what impact that would have on demand. Demand. So we haven't done that work yet, but if this was something that you wanted to progress, then we would.
Okay. Next question is regards to points 46. I just want to, again, let's explain this for layman's terms. The Major Events Fund, that's the pool of funding that includes Anzac Day, Waitangi Day and Matariki. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, that's incorrect. Those are funded separately.
Okay, understood.
That is the fund that Creek Fest and those types of events get funded through.
Okay, understood. Thank you for that clarification. And point 80, officers able to give any clarity to either increased measures or new measures with regards to tamariki and rangatahi, so as to reflect that there is no overall decrease in what we are doing as a council in meeting our strategic requirement to maintain a focus on tamariki and rangatahi at the heart of the city.
Through the Mayor, we've got a number of programs that we run through the swimming pools, the libraries, pātaka, as well as the Children and Young People's Fund as well, so we don't see any forecast reduction in current services in any of those areas.
Sorry, I want to ask this question again because I think I got confused in the response. I'm not asking about any existing services being reduced. I'm asking if there's any increase in new initiatives or boosting existing initiatives or new initiatives that would allow me to foresee that there was no overall decrease in our strategic commitment.
I'll have to come back to you because we've got a range of different services that we deliver rangatahi programs on. And then there are rangatahi adjacent programs that we have, such as the Mo Te Rongo programs, the job programs that we work with other agencies. We do have the Refresh Children and Young People strategy, but across council, I have to come back to you with a more detailed answer to that.
Okay. I just wanted to have the clarity around that in terms of our council making decisions that still allow us to maintain our commitment to the strategic priorities we all agreed to. I don't have any other commentary at this stage unless we come back afterwards. I just want to make sure.
No, we're going around and we're making the comments now. We've got our police waiting. So
fine, I will do that now. I think that I'm reluctant to ever want to change or filter what has been worked on in terms of going out to consult with the public. This is not a substantive vote. This is a vote to go out to the community. It's absolutely clear. We still get the chance to change our positions on it. I am very sensitive, however, to the point that Councillor Trilland raised, is that do we need to go out to the community with potentially controversial notions? I'm also acknowledging Councillor Weehapi's point that these are tough choices that have to be made if we want to be able to be seen to try and reduce the impact on ratepayers. So I'm not going to push too hard on voting in or out certain things, But I do think that the commentary that has been around the table thus far is that it has been a vexing issue in terms of the implementation of some of these proposed cuts, as well as, for me, some issues around the rationale behind some of the items being brought forward for consultation. However, to be honest, I'd rather hear from the public as we go through that process. And to be honest, they're going to put forward suggestions even if they're not inside the items for consultation. That has been the practice in many of these cycles, and we should listen to them all because they have put the time in to speak to us. Kia ora.
Councillor Ford, did you have another question?
No, I couldn't have said it any better than what you've just finished on. But I just wanted to clarify something around the it was the priority capex budgets in Porirua East, and you talked about the Eastern Hub. Initially, we had committed 8 million to that, but you've only got 5.5 in there. Has 2.5 already been committed in other projects, or can you just expand?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Through the chair. It's 20 million in the LTP. It's just there's 2 million in the 25-26 year because it was starting then, and then it's 3.5 for the strategic priorities.
Councillor Tron, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, just a really quick clarification further to Councillor Hayward's comments talking about the building consents item specifically. From a process perspective, if we vote to include this today, does that mean that's locked into the draft annual plan? Or is this saying, can you please go away and tighten it up in the way that you have just talked about, and then early next year we would decide? Because, hypothetically, we go do that work and then you come back and say, hey, actually the proposal we talked about, we think it's going to have this material impact on the number of consents that go through, therefore the case might not be as strong. So what does the process look like there for us?
It comes back in a formal paper in
February.
After Christmas, March. February.
Okay, so there's no harm then in exploring that today, and if it comes back and the case isn't as strong as it looks, we can then pull the plug at that point.
You can.
Yeah, okay, cool. That was everything. Thank you.
Councillor Philo.
Cool. Hey, look, I just wanted to start by acknowledging the work that you have done in this report to Jim and his team, because it is great the level of different savings options that you've canvassed. And my questions before was more about is there anything else? Because we all know right now is a really tough time for just about everybody out there. Even just this week, I spoke to a single mum who told me she had to sell some possessions to pay her rates. And someone else, even just at the Porirua College Awards, spoke to Lauren, and she said to me, oh my gosh, my rates bill's so high, what do I get for it? When I look out my door, what do I get for it? And these aren't uncommon things. I'm sure you've heard this from your constituents in the community. So it is really important how prudent we are with our money, with their money, with ratepayers' money. Which is why I was looking at what are some other indirect. You've said there's no stone left unturned, so. With regards to the point that the Deputy Mayor made around the Wellington water staff, I just wanted to clarify that, because I thought he said that to Pat Doherty at the workshop. So I asked him, and what he said was, actually, I've already sort of cleared out the consultants with the staff I have, and this point 2 is for additional staff in health and safety and procurement. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And on that note, given, now where was it? I think it was page 7. Page 7, point 43, there's an acknowledgement there around the savings of the operations, and also noting that it's not it will be noted in the document, but it's not going to be consulted on because it falls outside of our policy, which is also the same, I believe, for the Wellington Water extra funding for their IT system, for their extra staff. So given the public interest and the feedback we've sort of received already, I would put forward that similar to this point 43, that the IT costs, the transition costs are also noted in the consultation document. So that
Are you moving an amendment?
do I need to move that to put that in, or can that just be taken into consideration?
We would not typically put IT costs. We don't put our own in, certainly not at 100,000. It would be unusual for us to consult on something like that. We would typically consult on whether the Wellington Water investment, as we did in the LTP, what priority that was for.
So sorry,
our
just to be
community.
clear, Wendy, I wasn't saying consulting on it. I'm saying similar to point 43, where it's noted these are savings that we've found from the operations, 1.8 million. So to say these are also costs that we are considering in our annual plan, and there's 2 million for Wellington Water. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, could perhaps I just differentiate between what's in paragraph 43 and the other items. So paragraph 43 relates to savings that we have identified or opportunities within our existing budgets to improve the rate outcome for our ratepayers. The other two items that you're talking about are not currently in our budget. So the LTP budget is what I'm talking about, the year 2 LTP budget. So the 0.1 million that's in the paragraph 23 and the 0.2 million in the same paragraph, the costs that we've been made aware of that are outside the existing LTP budget. So they're actually a little bit different in what they are. So in the one that we were talking about, the operational savings, it's in the LTP. We think we can make savings there, which would therefore remove it from our budget. The other two items that we're talking about for Wellington Water, they're not in our LTP budget, and we've been made aware of them, and so they're coming in. So there's a little bit of a different treatment required for those two
We
scenarios.
wouldn't put IT out for people to choose whether Wellington Water has an IT system or not. We wouldn't put out that 100,000 as a vote. Is that what you're asking to do?
No, what I'm asking is for it to be noted like the savings were noted, so that there's transparency around it. Because
they're not. No, she's asking for another line.
For a note. So if we were to be even-handed about that, we would put all the upward costs in, which would make it a little bit unreadable, I would have thought. I don't know why we would pick out that particular cost.
Oh, sorry. Are we going to put the 5% extra that is that going to be in the consultation document then? No. The actual 5% table?
Only in a very general sense that we're facing pressures from these quarters, insurance costs, blah, blah.
I mean, it's not a very comprehensive
usually
table, but it does give a good picture what's here, the cost pressures of 0.19.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a very small number who have been emailing in, and I'm not sure why they're emailing in at the moment because we haven't gone out to consult on this yet. So I'll come to you, Councillor Leggett. I have you written down. Sorry, we haven't finished, Councillor Philo.
Is the concern because potentially when I'm looking at the figures, is the sort of the hesitation because it could be there was a 2 to 4 million if it was a cash contribution rather than funded. So is it about the uncertainty of how it's going to happen? Is that where you're coming from?
Through you, Chair, there is uncertainty, and that could become more clearer as we progress down this pathway. But I don't think that's the primary reason for not for. I'm neutral, agnostic, whether it's in or it's out. But if you go down to that level, then there's a lot of other things that you probably want to put in, which would make the document quite difficult to read. So it's a balancing act, I think, what's in, what's out.
Through the chair.
Yes, Jim.
I think I need to clarify something here. We are making an assumption in this annual plan, in the numbers that Ian's talking about here, that we are going to a Three Waters entity, but that is being consulted on. So if at the end of the day there is no decision to go to a Three Waters entity, these numbers do not exist largely other than the preliminary planning numbers or work that we've been doing that's undertaken at the moment. So we wouldn't be building an IT system if there wasn't a Water's entity. We're assuming here that there is going to be, but through consultation, that decision will be made.
Thank you. Another question? No? No. Councillor Leggett.
I think Wellington Water might be building an IT system regardless, but anyway, I think this is a great paper, and I'm aware that it's a bit of a moving feast, and we're talking about things that we'll have clarity on as we move forward. This is already out in the public domain anyway, so which is great, and I think our consultation paper should, with the information that we get, the clarity that we get, should go out and be as transparent to ratepayers as possible, and put up, are we going to vote separately on these other items?
I could vote separately on 7 if that's, I think it's just 7 that's causing issues. 7A, B, C, D.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of it, look, I'm happy with. I'm really happy that, you know, we've shown how we've got from a 10% with extras to 15 and then back down to 6.75 with options that would reduce it even further, and I think, you know, people will, if we put it correctly and are transparent when we go out to consultation, people will appreciate that. So, you know, I think it's great work, what we've done. And I don't want to discuss too much about the things that might or might not happen. Just one other thing, I'm with you, Kylie, in terms of Wellington Water. However, I'm aware of what Jim has said about the Wellington Water asking for the extra operational budget, which would be, you know, 4+% on top of what we've got here, and would put us up beyond 10+% again. So we should be aware of that, or maybe we should make our ratepayers aware of that as well, which is what you were pushing at the extra recommendation there. So look, I'm happy to go forward to a vote. I'm in support of this paper.
Councillor Waddle.
Thank you. I just want to echo Councillor Leggett and most others around the table on the work that's gone into this over the last few months from all parts of council. It's a really well-written report. We've dived deep. I just want to say a couple of quick comments. I think we need to get out and we just consult with the community. These aren't easy things to talk about or ask them for, but at the end of the day, we've asked them, and we're going to look for a savings over and above the savings we've already been able to find. Also, my other comment around the Wellington Water IT system. I think what we are going to be paying in rates for what we're going to get is brilliant. I think we need a quality asset management system to manage the assets I mean, in fairness, this should have been done a long time ago, but there's no better time than now. And I think it's great that we're going into this, and then with the potential for the assumption that we are going to a new model of managing water as a country. I think having a good asset management plan and a good asset system is a no-brainer. So let's put this to a vote.
I've just got Councillor We Happy, and then I will do that.
Yeah, so just going to the vote, I see that you're proposing to put 7 separately. I think that's not being transparent at all. I think if we're going to be transparent, we take the whole lot out to the community and let them decide. So what if there's work then that's been done? So what if it's going to make us look bad? That's not for us to choose. It's for the community to choose, whether or not they like it or not.
Thank you. It's just I had requests to take it separately. So I'm going to, yes, I am moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 and 9. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? 7A, we're going to have to do them separately because it's, well, A, B, C, D. So 7A, do you want it included, which is the parking fees? You're going to have to raise your hands. I think it's the only way to do it. So all those in favour of keeping the parking fees in, Councillor Ford, Councillor Waddle, Duncan, Leggett, Philo, Wehape, and against Jeff, Josh, and the Mayor.
Sorry, can you just confirm it's to include,
to
include it in the consultation document?
That's all it
It's
is.
not so.
No, it's just to include in the consultation. This is all of these. So it's in. B, fees, all agree. C, Cannons Creek pool charges. Against is just Jeff and Josh. Us and most? No, you didn't. No, just Jeff and Josh.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't agree. This is three of us. And D is the strategic partnership. Okay, everyone. No, we're going to have to do the whole lot. Sorry.
Can I just, a point of clarification, Mayor Baker?
Yes.
It was raised, Tier 1 and Tier 2, that we perhaps were already committed to doing that?
They're coming in February.
Okay.
So all I'm going to move is whether we want to take Tier 1 and Tier 2 out of the consultation. Remove it after what has been said. So do you want to take it out of the consultation, Tier 1 and Tier 2? All those in favour of taking it out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is to take it out of the consultation document. So out, take it out. Did you put your hand down or did you have it up? Yep, sorry. Well, we still haven't got there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to take it out. Leaving it in is Councillor 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's out. Thank you, people. That was a hard one to do. Right. The other ones, the other three we're leaving in. We were just, we're going to vote on those. Vote on leaving the major grants, the Chamber of Commerce. There's those two. All those in favour? Yes, leaving them in. Leaving them in the document, the last two. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that is carried. We're going to jump to something before we go to public excluded now because we've got the police sitting waiting here. We've got Renee Perkins and Te Roa Puna. We are doing a couple of Mayoral certificates. So, Kylie, would you like to announce these because I'm presenting them? Would you like to come up here and read these out? Or it's easier if you come up here. Read them out. Yes, we are still live.
Morena.
First one.
We are announcing the first Mayoral Award here for 2024 is for Graham Hanson. Yeah. A Justice of the Peace, a coordinator on the nominated adults roster to support young people in police custody, and a volunteer for the Mary Potter Hospice. Well done, Graham.
Photo.
The second one is for Helen Hanson, a volunteer for the Mary Potter Hospice and supporting Graham in his role as a Justice of the Peace and coordinator on the nominated adult roster. Congratulations, Helen.
Right, thank you for that. Sorry, Helen and Graham were unable to be here, so thank you for coming in. We are now going to move into non-public, so I will move that, seconded by Councillor Hayward. All those in favour? All those against? Carried.